Hello everybody and welcome to the INDX webinar series. I'm Karen Allman, Director of Fashion and Toys at AIS. For those of you who are new to AIS, we are Associated Independent Stores and we are the leading independent buying group for home and fashion in the UK and Ireland. We have a buying throughput of more than £500 million from more than 300 retail store members, including department stores, garden centres and specialist stores, including sports stores. We work exclusively with independents, which range from single stores to regional chains, with a combined retail turnover of over £2 billion. We have around 130 staff in specialist buying and support functions, and we're centrally located in the Midlands at Cranmore Park, where our head office doubles as an impressive conference and exhibition centre, which would normally be buzzing at this time of the year with industry trade shows. So in the absence of the live shows, we wanted to ensure that we continue to engage with our store members and provide relevant and useful information in the run-up to retail reopening in April and May. So we're delighted to be introducing a series of live industry-focused webinars aimed at independent retail businesses. I know we've got some guests from some of our contacts who've also joined us today, so welcome. We have an exciting group of expert speakers covering topics from social media skills to customer engagement. And I'd like to thank all of our speakers for giving up their time to present these sessions. There'll be no corporate jargon, just interesting content that we hope you'll find useful. And if you want to ask any questions, if you use the chat icon, which is the speech bubble at the top of your screen with a question mark in it. So I'm delighted to introduce Aaron Nicholson, who is the AIS Import Manager, and Rob Lawrie, who's the UK National Sales Manager for Rolig Logistics, who are going to give us a Brexit update with the focus on what that means for retailers. So just updating us on the latest situation with the impact on Brexit and what impact it's had so far on trade. Just a little bit about Aaron and Rob. Aaron has spent all of his working life within retail, beginning at John Lewis, where he had a series of management roles before becoming general manager for the John Lewis Returns Centre based in Solihull, which he captions as a fascinating blend of retail, logistics and contract management. During this time, Aaron also managed the home delivery fleet for the West Midlands area. Prior to joining AIS, Aaron was head of logistics for Connect Distribution. He says, my role at AIS is very different to anything I've done before and offers lots of diversity. Understanding the implications of legislative changes associated with Brexit and the COVID pandemic has kept him very busy for the last 18 months, and there's a lot to learn, a lot still left to learn. I think we're learning every day. Rob has worked within logistics for 25 years, from the courier TNT for 10 years and then 15 years within freight forwarding and supply chain. He's worked for Rolig for 5 years and has been an integral part of the Rolig Logistics UK development, which has seen double-digit growth in volumes and revenue. Previously to working for Rolig Logistics, Rob worked for Kuhn & Nagel on several trade lane specialist roles within the sea freight sector for 10 years. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Aaron.
So, to be introduced as a Brexit expert, I think is a little bit grand. It is such new legislation and so many new practices and processes. I don't think anybody really should be introducing themselves as an expert. Things are evolving and changing, and we are all learning together as we go. What I thought I would do today is sort of introduce a very basic overview of what has already happened, what's happening now, and what we might see in the next few months, potentially next 12 to 18 months. Rob will talk about Rolig after my presentation on Brexit, but I think as the presentation goes through, you'll understand the relationship between AIS and Rolig a bit more. So, headlines to date, you may have heard we have left, the UK has left the EU. Certainly an end of freedom of movement of people. as of January the 1st, trade between the UK and the EU has changed. We do have a deal. However, I think we're all getting to the stage where we understand that goods crossing borders, there is an additional administrative process that we all have to go through. There are exceptions to this via the Northern Ireland Protocol, which we'll have a slide on that in a few slides' time. And those of you who were on the previous presentation by Andrew from BIRA, he mentioned free trade and country of origin. We'll discuss that as well in a few slides' time. So, key headline: Brexit impacts EU to UK and UK to Ireland business, full stop. If you haven't already, I would recommend logging onto the gov.uk website, signing up for the Brexit updates. You will get an awful lot of stuff that is completely irrelevant to you, but there will be some good stuff in amongst it all. And of course, the gov.uk website is fact, is what's happening. There are still a lot of opinions out there which can get confusing. So keep calm, carry on trading. Again, EORI number, not something that anybody had heard of probably 18 months ago, but you will now need one to continue trading with your EU business partners, or if you're in the Republic of Ireland, your UK business partners. They all have slightly different formats, as it says there. UK represents as a GB EORI, Northern Ireland an XI EORI, Republic of Ireland an IE EORI, but essentially you will need one to continue trading. In the new world, somebody will be classed as an importer if goods are travelling between borders. And if you are the importer, you will probably need what's called a customs intermediary, also known as agents or brokers. You can make the declarations that are required to get goods across borders yourself. The government, certainly the UK government, is offering funding for small businesses to help with the training of this. But at the same time, the government and AIS not advising you get into this. It only really pays off to make your own declarations if you are a significant business. And obviously, the business relationship between AIS and Rolig now becoming more obvious. Rolig are our freight forwarder and have been for a number of years, and they also act as our customs intermediary for direct import activity that AIS is undertaking. I said on the previous slide that somebody will be the importer. If that is new terminology or that you're not quite sure what that means, essentially what you will need to do is look at the Incoterms that you have agreed with your suppliers if goods are coming across a border. Incoterms stands for International Commercial Terms. They're not legally binding, but they indicate to either party of an agreement who is meant to do what and when as part of the supply chain process. The next slide that I'll flash up is from the Rolig website and details what the various Incoterms are. I shan't dwell on it too long. I'll call out a couple of examples, but one of the Incoterms is DDP, stands for Delivery Duty Paid. If that Incoterm is being used, then the supplier of the goods is the importer. For any other Incoterm being used, then whoever is buying the goods in this example, I'm saying the retailer, would be the importer. And it's important that that is clearly understood by both parties because there are implications. Commodity codes have always been used to bring goods in from outside of the EU. They will now need to be stated preferably on the commercial invoice when goods are moving between borders. Commodity codes, for those of you who aren't familiar with those, they help establish what duty will be payable on a particular product type. So products are grouped, and it's not always obvious how they are grouped. And yes, so duty may be applicable to some product, whereas before it wouldn't have been for trade within the EU. And that brings me on to the free trade. So I think it was on the 24th of December, I think it was Christmas Eve, when Boris addressed certainly the UK and said we had a free trade deal, and we all breathed a huge sigh of relief. And although it generally does mean that goods between the EU and the UK can travel free of duty, it doesn't apply to everything. And it's really important now to understand where goods are originating from. I'm not going to get into the definition of origination of goods in this presentation because it can get very, very technical. For the purposes of this very, very sort of entry-level presentation into Brexit, I'm simply going to say where goods are made is a decent starting description, but it's not necessarily true of all products. So essentially, if goods are coming from, let's say, China into the EU and then coming into the UK from there, you could have double duty applying. There are ways around it, we believe, but they are being investigated. As I say, it's all very new, and nobody has definitive answers as yet. So free trade, it says there preferential rates of duty. That's the posh way of saying free trade, and of course the preferential rate would be 0%. So you might hear that referenced as well. In terms of how do you know if something is originating from the EU, the simplest method is to ask your supplier to provide that. It's called a statement of origin. Again, preferably put on a commercial invoice. You're not asking for any evidence at that stage, but obviously there would need to be evidence to back up the claim by the supplier. And the statement is quite simple. It's something along the lines of, all the goods on this invoice originate from France, for example, as part of the EU. If you are designated as the importer of goods into the UK or into the Republic of Ireland from the UK, you will need to keep a record, and I've listed there sort of the detail that is part of a general transaction anyway. This is for, certainly in this country it would be HMRC. I'm not quite sure what the Irish equivalent tax office is, but if they ever performed an audit on your import activity, they would want to see evidence of record keeping as part of your good business practices. So as I say, this is off the Rolig website, all the Incoterms that are in use today. I think the latest update was 2020. I'll take the top two as an example. So you've got EXW, XWorks, and you've got then across from that DDP all across the top. The color coding helps understand who's bearing the risk and who's bearing the costs in each part of the process. And again, along the very top, you can see seller, carrier, border, port. So all the various touch points within the supply chain. DDP, I said, is where the supplier is essentially the importer. So as you can see, solid blue across both headings there in terms of risk and costs. So the supplier is saying, I'm going to bear all the risks and all the costs of getting the goods from me, the seller, to you, the buyer, through all the various touch points, and I will clear the product through imports. XWorks is kind of the mirror image of that, whereby the seller says, I will absorb all the risk and costs associated with producing the product. But once I've done that, that's then up to you as the buyer to come and get that product and take it to the destination that you wish to. All of the risks and costs are borne by you, the buyer. So those are the two sort of polar opposites. And then you can see there's a number of different variances. In terms of what you might see from an EU supplier to the UK or a GB supplier to the Republic of Ireland, you're probably going to see DDP or DAP as the two main ones, but not necessarily. So trade in Ireland, again, hugely complicated political scene. The Northern Ireland Protocol means that the trade within Ireland is treated differently. So I tried to summarize it very, very simply. These are very, very broad statements. There may well be some nuances within each of these trading arrangements, but essentially trade between Irish businesses, Northern Irish and Republic of Irish businesses, there's no change to whatever was happening before Brexit. Northern Ireland can continue to export to mainland Great Britain without any changes. In terms of Great Britain to Northern Ireland, there will be, or is a requirement, I should say now, of course, live, for more formal export declarations by the supplier in Great Britain. I think these are also referred to as the safety and security declarations. So that's to get product from GB to Northern Ireland. In terms of GB to Republic of Ireland or vice versa, we are now talking full import-export declarations as part of the EU still, obviously the Republic of Ireland. GB is now just any other third country, as China would be, or the United States. So full import-export declarations. Duty may well be owed for goods, as I've already touched on, not originating in either the EU or the UK. And the level of duty, you can look for that on the government websites. Again, if you just type in tariff codes, it should help you find what you're looking for. And of course, over the last 40 years, as the relationships have developed, moving goods to and from Ireland has become an integrated process. If you've got goods for Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, you put them all on the same lorry and moved it across to obviously reduce your logistics costs. You can still do that, but it is far more difficult and actually probably easier these days to split the two depending on the end destination. So round robin trips starting GB to Northern Ireland to Republic of Ireland, there is more paperwork that that sellers and buyers have to be aware of. I appreciate I've skipped over that, and it is hugely complicated, but as I say, it's meant to be a very entry level sort of set of slides. So VAT payable, I freely admit I'm not a VAT expert, so this is a sort of an area that I'm not massively familiar with, but happy to cover it very quickly. So import VAT is now payable on anything coming into the UK from anywhere in the world over £135. There is something called postponed VAT accounting that was introduced from the 1st of January to help businesses with their cash flow initially. As it suggests, postponed VAT accounting, you can put off the payment to another day. If you're VAT registered, you can use this. It's not mandatory. There are there's three options effectively. You can use postponed VAT accounting. You can, as it says there, pay the VAT as the goods enter the UK, or you can use a deferment account. Some of you might already have deferment accounts in place. It will depend on your business model as to what is the most appropriate method of payment for you, but import VAT will be payable on anything over £135. Northern Ireland kind of gets the best of all worlds, really. Free trade with the Republic of Ireland, also can take advantage of postponed VAT accounting for non-EU imports, but also is still viewed as part of the EU VAT area. So again, doesn't have to worry about import VAT from the EU. So pretty good deal all round from a trade point of view for Northern Ireland. Deferment accounts, we have one at AIS, works very well for us. Rolig help administer that account, makes payment of VAT and duty basically automatic. You get a monthly remittance, and you obviously make sure you pay the VAT man, but it's very smooth. So again, works well for us, but we probably bring in, well, we've always brought in stock from outside of the EU, so it's something we're very familiar with. There is additional costs to the supply chain end to end. If you deal predominantly or exclusively in the UK with UK wholesalers, most of what I've said will be not irrelevant to you, but you won't necessarily get involved with the administrative processes. But I think everybody should be aware that there is definitely an additional cost in the supply chain, and it will filter through at some stage, I've no doubt, in the next 12 to 18 months. It is a very confused picture, and I think it's a confused picture for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is I think some suppliers are trying to be very, very helpful and absorb as much of these additional costs as they possibly can. So I know that some suppliers are passing it all on as a surcharge. Some are including it into their cost price. Some are going half and half. It's a really, I say, the picture differs from supplier to supplier. I've already said that there may be a duty on goods, so that's one cost, but the rest of the costs are linked to the logistical process. Now, I've said already that GB suppliers need to make an additional export entry to get stock to Northern Ireland. I've put there, this cost is not yet clear. An awful lot of it, this particular cost, is currently being absorbed by the logistics network itself. We were sort of led to believe, I don't know, 3 months before Brexit went through, that this would be an additional £20 per shipment. I'm not seeing evidence necessarily of that happening myself, but I know that the charges are out there. So it is a legitimate charge, but I think, as I say, a lot of people are trying to absorb it before they pass it on to try and help people get over the initial hump. What is a lot clearer is the cost of the import-export process linked to moving stock between the EU and Great Britain. So we know that that is around £100 per shipment, and that's broken down to £70 for the import declaration. Certainly into the UK, it's £70. Again, Republic of Ireland, freight forwarders are charging anything between, I think, 60 and 90 euros, which of course is equivalent to sort of £70. And roughly £30 to get product out of the country of origin. Industry standard across customs brokerage companies seems to be around 5 commodity codes per shipment. Again, that does vary. So it's not, when I say it's £100 a shipment, that's not £100 per item. If you've got one commodity code with 100 units, it's £100. If you've got 5 different commodity codes, different quantities of each, still roughly £100 per shipment. If you go over the 5 commodity codes, then again, some companies are charging a surcharge, say £10 for every commodity code. But again, it's not quite industry standardized yet. It's only, where are we, a couple of months into things. So that picture is, well, that situation is yet to settle down, really. Obviously, from what I've just said, the way to minimise the impact of that £100 if you are bringing stock in from the EU or Republic of Ireland from the UK is consolidate loads by commodity code, if you possibly can. That obviously has impacts on lead times for your customers, but that's one way of thinking about things. So very, very quickly, a little timeline of what's happened and where we were. So obviously 2020, there was an almighty scramble to try and get a deal across the line between the EU and the UK. In the background, the UK was striking or trying to strike new trade deals around the world with lots of success, I've got to say. So it wasn't all sort of doom and gloom. There is quite a rosy picture going forward in certain parts of the world for trade with the UK. 24th of December, as I say, was when we got to hear that the deal had been struck. From the 1st of January, it says down at the bottom there, chaotic scenes at the ports didn't really materialise. Obviously, a lot of stores were closed or demand was down, and the supply chain was already very much in chaos as a result of COVID. So it was still chaotic at ports, but not necessarily all because of Brexit. We are now in a period of deferment. So I haven't really touched on that in the rest of the presentation, but goods that are coming in for the first 6 months of this year, the UK government have allowed companies to defer that VAT and duty payment for up to 6 months. It says there we're not recommending it as a business really, merely because we've taken the view that you're simply putting off the inevitable. You're going to have to make the payment, and it's probably best to get good working practices in now. And once obviously retail stores reopen and things get busier, you want to have good solid reporting systems in place to cope with whatever comes for the rest of the year. But you can defer those payments for a 6-month period. Obviously, we're going to settle down, hope that the global supply chain recovers a little bit, and then at the end of this year, obviously all VAT and duty must be paid. In terms of, there are safety regulations. Well, there's all sorts of EU regulations interwoven at the moment with UK law. They will obviously stay in place for a number of years. But I've mentioned specifically there, the UK CA mark will replace, or has replaced, the CE mark for electrical safety and other safety standards. So it's about helping AIS, helping members particularly understand what that all means, and what the responsibilities are as an importer as opposed to just a trader, which is again another key difference in how you might be operating in the post-Brexit era. Along the bottom there, I have said global logistics still very turbulent. Some of you will be more aware than others. There's been some quite high-profile news items. IKEA in the last couple of days have announced there's a global shortage of garden furniture, or rather, they've got a shortage of garden furniture. It's there. It's just getting it out of China at the moment is very, very difficult. And in particular in the UK, land haulage is becoming more and more strained. Simply due to the lack of drivers in that industry. So logistics and supply chain will be very, very tough for the remainder of 2021. There's an awful lot of demand still to work its way through the supply chain. And then, I mean, hopefully we've all got our fingers crossed that from the 12th of April or somewhere around there will open and sales will rocket through the roof again. And the supply chain will have to cope with that as well. So a word of caution, it's going to be another tough year from a logistical point of view. And the final slide for me is just on SEMPAC. So there's been a bit of confusion from some of our members as to the role of AIS and particularly SEMPAC in the importing exporting process. So I think it's worth just saying that, as it says there, SEMPAC is a paying agent only. At no stage, unless obviously you are purchasing goods directly from AIS through our AIS trading division, at no stage do AIS take responsibility or ownership of the goods being imported or exported. So SEMPAC, the role of SEMPAC doesn't change. Payment can still be made through SEMPAC, but it does not replace the need for you guys to have good, solid business relationships in place with your business partners, understand which Incoterms are being used, who the importer is, and the legal ownership of goods on the journey. Okay, so that is a very, very whistle-stop tour of Brexit. I'm now going to hand over to Rob. Are you there, Rob?
Yes, thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon, everybody. Quick introduction to myself, Rob Laurie, work for Rolig Logistics in the UK. We've been partnering now AIS successfully for 5 years. A little bit of information about who we are, Rolig Logistics. We've been operating since 1852. Global head office is in Bremen, in Germany. We're still a family-run business and an independent business, but we're no small business by any means. We operate in 35 countries. We've got 153 locations. 2,300 employees around the globe. Most importantly, we manage 260,000 TEUs. TEUs are 20-foot equivalent size unit for sea freight and via air, just shy of 132,000 tons of air freight. And just to also let you know, we are financially stable. Again, we produce our financials every year and we share those with our customers just to ensure that you're aware that we're financially stable. Next slide, please, Aaron. Just like to touch on some of the services, additional services that we offer. We operate our air freight services. We have consoles each week coming in from Asia and the US into the UK, where we operate those consoles through our own warehouse, through Birmingham. So it's an end-to-end supply chain solution via Rolig. We operate a sea freight service, again, which is very, very robust at the moment, but under a lot of pressure, where we offer FCL, weekly sailings coming in from Asia, US, etc. We also operate our own consoles on sea freight, so less than container loads. And to supplement and support that, we offer rail services also coming in from China on a weekly departure. Again, throughout those services, I think that gives a very much a sort of global network and global support for the AIS and AIS members. Supplementing that, we offer a project logistics division. Contract logistics, which we offer through the UK, is also based on Cranmore, very, very close to the AIS conferencing facilities, where we also work with the AIS fashion team, so where we receive the product coming in from around Europe, around the globe, where we consolidate it, we store it, we pick and pack it, we distribute it throughout the UK, giving full visibility, where everything's supported by our digital solutions, where we've got an online platforms for either customers to access their shipments, their shipment data, their commercial data, etc., etc. So that's basically an overview of the services that we offer as an organisation. Next slide, please, Aaron. So as I've mentioned, AIS and Rolik have been working together now collaboratively for 5 years. Through that period, we've actually created a dedicated key accounts team based in our Shirley office in Solihull. Been working with the team for 5 years, very, very supportive, understand the AIS and AIS members' business. We manage their freight, we manage the warehousing. The benefits of doing that for the members, we've secured preferential pricing, preferential space agreements, particularly important at this time where there's so much pressure on the global supply chain. We've also got extended credit terms, and again, we can utilise the facilities for SEMPAC to pay for your freight requirements, which we've offered out at 50 days, which do give extended terms against the market. Next slide, please, Aaron. We've created our Home Solutions division, which work for, as some of the brands there, Classic Furniture, AIS, Cousins, Housing Units, Vida Living, Highline, some brands that you may recognise there as independents around the UK. Throughout that furniture and homewares division, we're now working with 120 suppliers out in Asia. It's a tried and tested model. We've got furniture contracts specifically for these products. So as I say, where we've got challenges regarding getting products into the UK at the moment, we've got protected space and preferential pricing. We've got dedicated consoles, and we operate what we call control towers throughout Asia, where people look specifically at the furniture business, and the control tower in the EU and the UK, which look after furniture specifically for AIS. Next slide, please, Aaron. We've got our fabric solutions where we're working with some of the brands within the UK. Some of the brands you may recognise again: Parisian, Amanda Wakely, Next, AIS, Jenny Packham, Regatta, Intersport, Holland and Sherry. Again, very similar concept that we've got in place for the home solution. We've got control towers and core contracts to support that business via air freight and sea freight. We've got a fabric solutions team, fabric processes, and an experienced fabric solutions operators. Next slide, please, Aaron. 2 contacts in the UK. You'll call initial contact if you have any sales inquiries and you'd like to discuss the services in more detail that we could offer you. My contact details are there. We've also got our customs and land manager, Pete Richardson, who's recently joined us, who's dealing with our customs brokerage for all the AIS and AIS members currently. So I think it just leads us on there to very, very briefly, I'm aware, but again, sort of mindful of the time constraints. And I guess we can move into, have you got any questions?
Thank you, Rob and Aaron. We've got quite a few questions, so if we don't have time to go through them all, I think we'll sort of take them offline and then we can issue the answers to the questions, because I'm not sure we're going to get through all of them. Anyway, sure. I'm going to start asking away. Can I ask what happens to the VAT element if a supplier delivers from the EU to the UK DDP? Will the carrier have to collect the VAT, and will it have to be paid prior to receipt of the goods?
Do you want that one, Rob, or is that me?
I can take it.
Go for it. So,
okay, yeah, so if it's got being delivered DDP, it'll be subject to, as you say, if we've got the PVA in place. If the PVA is not in place, it will need to be collected. And the freight forwarder or the haulier, in essence, the receiver will have to be collecting that to pay that through the HMRC. As Aaron's advised previously, very, very much advisable to have a customs broker into place to make sure this is done for you smoothly.
Right. What was the, you said PVA? What's that?
Do you want to jump in again, Aaron? You mentioned it through your presentation.
PVA, what does it stand for, Rob?
The delayed VAT.
Ah, the VAT deferred.
Oh, postponed VAT. Okay, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So that's a situation where you can delay your VAT if you're VAT registered for the first 6 months of the year. You'll receive a monthly statement, and you can go online and digitally track how much VAT is liable. So you can defer it for the first 6 months to make trade easier whilst we go for sort of integrate and go into the new process, but it will need to be paid.
Okay. So I guess it might delay. It might help a retailer manage their finances.
Yeah, very much in the short term. It's to aid with the transition of going from, as you say, coming into the new regime. So they can delay and defer that payment for the first 6 months. It will be tracked, and that can be tracked online, and you get a monthly statement, but it will need to be paid eventually.
Okay. When will the issue with lack of containers be resolved?
Very good question. I live this pain every single day. I think the challenges we're facing around, we've got huge bottlenecks around the globe where there's been issues regarding social distancing through COVID. We've seen services have been reduced because of the situation with COVID. So, if we go back this time last year, China was in a state of lockdown. As soon as China opened up, then Europe and the US went into lockdowns. The steamship lines then decided to take vessels out of service because the capacities within the steamship world works on a supply and demand basis. So they took a lot of capacity out of the market. Then when products were arriving into places like the US and Europe, we've got the situation regarding social distancing. So containers coming off a vessel, which traditionally should take anywhere about 30 minutes, was taken up to 3.5 hours. Then you had a situation with people having, as I say, more than socially distanced, but drivers were then going off with COVID. It's created huge challenges on the ports. If we go back to October 2020, we saw a lot of retailers were starting to stockpile pre-Brexit on the steamship coming in from Asia. So we saw volumes were up from October 2019 to 2020, volumes were up 100%. The ports have only got so much equipment available to de-stuff the vessels. The ships only have so long to berth, etc. Alongside, obviously, that taking longer than normal. So we've seen containers then being sent back to the continent, which then have to be sent back over on a feeder vessel. The UK then has a surplus of equipment in the UK because of all that volume that came in pre-Brexit, but the steamship lines can't get the volumes out because they can't get the berthing time in the UK, which they're now dropping into Europe. So when is that situation going to rectify itself? I would say certainly not this side of sort of Q3. The steamship lines evacuate as much equipment into Asia on a very regular basis, but as soon as that's arriving, it's being used up. So I think we're in this zone for at least the next 6 months.
Okay, thank you. Can you, actually I can ask these two questions together. Can you explain what a bonded warehouse is and how retailers might make use of that facility? And are there any other solutions or any other options to a bonded warehouse? And do you have to pay the duty in the end anyway?
Okay, so I'll take that one again. A bonded warehouse is a facility where we can bring the product into the UK under bond, where we don't have to pay the duties immediately. It goes into the bonded warehouse. It can be held there for 6 months. There are two ways to work with it. You can either work it under suspension, where we suspend the duties. So we import it, goes into the bonded facility, and it has to go back out of the bonded facility without it being repacked or retouched. Very much in the short term, that's a very, very expensive solution, we believe. Obviously announced in the government budget last week was the announcement of free ports, which we believe will actually take away that pressure away from bonded warehouses. Bonded warehouses, again, if we look at the volumes that were coming into the UK from Asia, which were then re-exported into Europe, we need to find a better way to manage that than bringing them inland, etc. So the free ports at the ports will be taking that sort of strain and extra burden within the supply chain. Again, those free ports will be sitting outside the UK's sort of duty regime, so that should take the pressure off there. But again, we're some way off those going live.
Okay, and so would duty be payable in the end, or would you actually just avoid paying the double duty?
Again, it will depend. If the product is not repacked or reworked at all in the UK, it will avoid the duty. If it comes in and we have to repack it, we have to rework it, etc., it's then classed as an import, ready and available for a re-export. So that would be liable for duty.
Yeah, okay. Regarding the VAT issue, as a small retailer, it's not financially viable to pay the VAT up front. I have a deferment account which, as I understand, only delays payment for 6 weeks. Is that correct? Why can we not balance off the output and input of VAT at the end of every VAT year?
I think, Karen, we'd probably have to engage with Paul and Nikki on that.
Okay.
I don't have the answer.
Okay. So we'll take that away and try and deliver an answer on that. You mentioned needing customs agent, but as small independent retailers, do carriers not provide the service, for example, yourselves, UPS, DHL, and then invoice the retailer?
you want me to take that?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, the answer is potentially, but yeah, go on, Rob.
So again, it's small independent retailers. Somebody will have to pay that clearance for those goods. So again, as the provider, we need to confirm who's going to be paying that duty and who's going to be paying that customs entry. As the retailer, if you're importing the goods, then that's where the ultimate responsibility should sit. As Aaron's mentioned through the shipment terms, if the supplier wishes to ship under DDP, that's a way where the supplier will be bearing those costs, but those costs will still have to be paid.
Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned this earlier. If Northern Ireland is a first drop with Republic of Ireland being the ultimate destination, is the consignment fee only payable once?
Is that a question, Karen, from the Q&A sheet?
Yeah.
There is, so if it goes directly into Northern Ireland and then travels on to Republic of Ireland, the initial fee to get it into Northern Ireland would be payable, but then there would be no other fees because you can trade freely within Ireland.
Right.
So if it comes directly into Northern Ireland from rest of world, or any fees that are payable will be paid at that point, and then free trade onward to Republic of Ireland.
Okay, fine, thank you. And I think the last question has already been answered. So just clarify again one more time, what is the advantage of having a VAT deferment account?
Well, essentially there'll be three ways of paying your VAT. Using the postponed VAT accounting, using a deferment account, or paying it up front. So both payments through postponed VAT accounting or through the deferment account simply mean that you can put off paying your VAT to another day. So that's a cash flow benefit. Then the two differences between postponed VAT accounting and deferment accounts. Deferment account is an automatic process. So when a customs broker makes the entry on your behalf, they'll simply input your deferment account number on the import and export documentation, and your deferment account gets charged automatically, and you pay your bill. I thought it was monthly, but somebody's already said 6 weekly, but on a cyclical basis. The postponed VAT accounting, as I said, I'm not a VAT expert, so however you would normally pay your VAT, it would be rolled up into that process.
Okay, great.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. That is the end of our questions and the end of our session. So thank you very much for your time. That was really interesting. And thank you to our participants for attending.